Anvil Empires just wrapped up its third pre-alpha war, and it ended in one of the worst ways possible. As many of you know, war in this game never stops. Battles rage on around the clock with no breaks. Within this persistent war genre lies a problem though. Imagine logging in only to find that everything you fought for had vanished. No battle, no last stand. The war was just over and the other faction had won while everyone was offline. That's exactly how the third war in Anvil Empires ended, and how it happened is with a strategy called night capping. For those unfamiliar, night capping is when players attack enemy territory at a time when defenders are least active, usually in the middle of the night or during off-peak hours. The result is that an entire region falls, not due to superior strategy or skill, but simply because no one was online to defend. Anvil Empires is certainly not the first game to struggle with this issue. In EVE Online, night capping was called alarm clock wars. Groups of players would set their alarms for the middle of the night to attack bases and catch their enemies off guard. If your alliance didn't have members awake in all time zones, you were doomed. In PlanetSide 2, this was known as ghost capping. This happened when players captured bases with little to no resistance, while most of the enemy team was asleep or off fighting in another battle. It led to frustrating situations where factions woke up to see their hard-earned gains erased. And finally in Foxhole, a game made by the same developers of Anvil Empires. Night capping in this game has flipped entire wars. One faction will push deep into enemy territory during peak hours, only for the enemy to take it all back in the middle of the night. It really turns some wars into a time zone based tug of war, rather than a battle of skill or strategy. Overall, it's a controversial tactic. Some players see it as a legitimate strategy, while others think it's unfair. All of the games I've mentioned have tried different solutions to prevent night capping. EVE Online has introduced mechanics such as reinforcement phases, timers that give defenders time to prepare and defend their base. PlanetSide 2, which dealt with ghost capping for years, implemented a simple fix by extending capture timers, making it significantly longer for smaller groups to capture a base. And finally, Foxhole added AI defense structures that will automatically fire at enemies, making it harder to capture key areas when no players are online. Currently, Anvil Empires lacks any of these safeguards. There are no AI defenses, no timers, no systems in place to prevent an entire war from being decided while players are asleep. However, there is some hope. Mark Foote, one of the developers for Anvil Empires, had this to say about AI defenses. There's still a reasonable possibility for AI defenses. It may be necessary for long-term persistent worlds. If it's done, it would be along the lines you listed here, static towers that need supplies, end quote. Mark Foote went on to say in other comments that if AI is implemented into the game, it won't be strong enough to repel armies away. The idea is that it stalls enemies long enough for defenders to show up. But would that be enough to stop what happened in the third pre-alpha war? During the third pre-alpha war, the pagans launched a major offensive during low population hours, capturing all ancient keeps while their opponent was asleep. Pagans were largely a EU-based faction, while the ancients were primarily NA-based. When the war-ending attack took place, the pagans were at their peak population, while the ancients had barely anyone online to defend. This pre-alpha war only lasted 3 days, which was far shorter than anyone had expected. I had read that some players had planned time off of work or adjusted their schedules to play in this war, only for the war to be cut short before they can even get a chance to experience the new mechanics. One player had this to say: "We had several battles planned for the entire week, and most of us woke up to the war being ended. It's not the epic Anvil we want, so hence the salt. The pagans won fair and square. No cheating, nothing. But too soon, the game ended." End quote. I think it might be time for the devs to start considering AI defenses or other mechanics to slow down night raids or prevent things like this from happening again. Losing territory to an enemy attack is one thing. Losing it without a fight while you sleep feels terrible, especially when you spent hours gathering resources, building defenses, and preparing for a war. Players can feel like their efforts are worthless when tactics like this come up. It makes some players choose to quit the game altogether. This could be one possible factor I think that contributes to Foxhole's low retention rate. Now certainly I'm not saying we should remove night raids entirely. They should be part of the game, but there needs to be something to slow down attackers, so they can't just waltz in and burn everything to the ground unchallenged. At the end of the day, it's up to the developers to design a system that keeps the war engaging without punishing players simply for sleeping. I would like to remind everyone that this is still pre-alpha for Anvil Empires. The purpose of these tests is to find and fix problems just like this. It's important that we give our feedback in a constructive way that helps the developers make the best decisions for both the player base and the game's long-term success. I would imagine that balancing 3 factions that play in different time zones is going to be a major challenge. and this war showed how big of an issue that can be. As we've talked about, night capping is a problem in nearly every persistent war game. If the developers don't address it, wars won't be won by tactics and sieges, but by those who are willing to stay up the latest. So what do you think? Should Anvil Empires add AI defense structures or other mechanics to prevent night capping? Let me know in the comments. I had a lot of fun while the test was up for those 3 days, and I'm getting excited for the next one. The devs have officially announced that the next test will be next Monday on March 31st. If you are wanting an invite to the game to try and test it out, I recommend joining the Anvil Empires Discord. I will leave a link to the description below. One last thing is that I'm starting an Excel sheet for Anvil Empires clans so that other players can find groups to play with. If your clan is interested in being on the list, join my Discord in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching and for your support. Make sure to subscribe for more Anvil Empires content. I'll see you out on the battlefield. Cheers!